Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. We're getting a jump on the Mishnah Yomi for Shabbat Tshuva. We are in Challah. We're not literally in the Challah. We're learning Challah, and we're in the third chapter, the first Mishnah. Ochlin arai mina isa ad shetit golgel bechitin v'titamtem b'seurin. Ochlin arai means you can eat it as a snack, as an informal, just a bite. Now, we've seen this concept by Truma and Meiser already, that even though produce might be, practically done, but you haven't brought it into the house yet for Meiser, you could still have a snack, just to have one or two, just, take it in your hand and eat one, but you can't have a seuda. You can't sit down at the table and eat from it until you've taken the tide. So this is a similar concept by Challah, except what are we dealing with is a bunch of flour, and he's poured in the water, and he wants to have a taste of the flour. So, I don't know if people normally eat flour, but maybe he just wants to taste it, see what's going on, or maybe he's just have a little snack of the flour before the dough is mixed up into dough, and then you're going to need to bake it. So we would allow this until it's tit golgel, which means rolled up, like really kneaded into a dough, bechitin, with wheat flour. So you could take a little scoop of the flour and have a little snack. V'titamtem, and until it's pounded down, b'seurin, by barley flour. The Bartner explains barley flour doesn't mix as well as wheat flour. It's crumbly, it doesn't kind of get that smooth consistency. So instead of really getting it mit golgel, really kneaded up into a nice, even consistency, you just kind of pound it down and then stick it in the oven by barley bread. Again, barley bread is usually animal food, or for carbon sota or carbon omer. It's not the normally people are eating wheat. So at this phase, it's kind of a dough and kind of not, because you've poured in the water, but it's not really mixed up and kneaded up yet. So it's still technically, even though you're about to make it into challah dough, about to make it into dough and then separate your challah, it's technically not quite chayav yet, even though it's about to be. That's why you're still achilas arai here. So Mishnah continues, Gilgala bechitin timtima b'surin, he kneaded by wheat flour or pounded down by barley flour, ochel mimeno chayav mita. But once he's done this mixing, it's mamash a dough now. Now he's chayiv mita. This is mita b'dei shemayim. This is the punishment, same punishment for eating truma if someone is not a kohen. Kevan shehi notenet et hamayim. Once he's put in the water, magbahat chalata, he could actually separate the challah. So it's interesting. This is the same time period where he could technically snack from the dry flour, but once he's put in the water, he could also separate the challah. And we see a similar concept by Truma and Meiser also, where it's pretty much done, and he could separate Meiser, but he could also take a snack before it's a formal reaches the house or a formal seuda. Similar concept. So magbachat chalata, so he could take the challah, bilvad shelo yehei chamisha revai kemach, as long as there aren't 5/4 kav of kemach, that's the shear, the minimum shear to take challah, dry. So what's going on is if he's got a big old bowl of flour and he pours water in one corner, and so one corner is starting to turn into dough, but the rest of it is still not dough, still dry flour. So if he separates flour right now, then that dry flour that doesn't have any water touching it or mixing with it, that's not really obligated in challah yet, because it's not a dough yet, it's still dry flour. So he would have to go back and take challah again for that dry flour if it's the minimum shear, 5/4 kav. So he should really, theoretically, once the water and the flour are in the bowl together, you could take challah, but really you should be mixing it up. Mishnah base, nidma'ah. So nidma'ah means it became medumah. Now what's medumah? It's a mixture of truma and chulin, of truma, which is the portion for the kohen, and regular food, which everyone else can eat. So you can imagine if someone's in the kitchen and they've got a bag of truma flour that they need to give to the kohen, and they've got their bag of chulin flour, and they have a mix-up, or they combine them, it could happen. So nidma isota ad shelo gilgula, before it gets kneaded up, talking about wheat flour, petura, you don't have to take challah, because we don't take challah from truma. And here the medumah is truma mixed with chulin. She medumah pater, medumah is pater. Misha Gilgula, if the truma gets mixed in after he's already rolled the chulin into a dough, chayev, but he would have to take challah. because this original dough was already chayev to take challah. It was already an obligation to take challah now before the truma fell in. Some of the Mefarshim say this is talking about Bizman Azeh, when the Challah is dirabanan, because dimua, the medumah, is also a dirabanan concept because of mixing. That's a stringency dirabanan. So if we can't say, if the mitzvah of Challah was deraisa, we wouldn't say the dirabanan and medumah would knock out the deraisa and he wouldn't have to separate. So the Mishnah continues, Nolad lo safek tumah. Now if there's a doubtful tumah, maybe it touched the sheretz, Achlo Gilgula, before they kneaded it together, Ta'aseh Betuma. So go ahead and make the dough anyway. Misha Gilgula, once he's kneaded the dough into a dough, and then there's a Safek Tuma, Ta'aseh Betahara. Try to keep it Tahor. Even though there's a doubt if it became Tameh, and maybe it's Tameh, do your best to keep it Tahor from now on, once it's become subject to Challah Rabosai. This is Mishnah for Shabbat Shuvah. We should, even though we have our doubts about, we don't know what Hashem decreed for us on Rosh Hashanah. We don't know how Hashem's gonna look at us on Yom Kippur. We really should be in doubt. We are, in the Sefer Benonim, at best, God willing. So even though we have our doubts about, am I really a tzaddik? Am I really worthy of life? We should do our best to stay b'tahara like this dough. Chazak Baruch Rabotai, Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos.